Yesterday, I discussed the Seder plate and what it entails. Today, I'm going to go to a different halacha. Yayin shel arba koises. The cups of wine that we have to have, the 4 cups of wine, that is obligatory on the Leil Seder. It's not optional, it's obligatory. Echad anoshim ve'echad noshim, be it men or ladies, chayovim lishtois, they have an obligation to drink B'Leil Pesach on Seder night, arba koises shel yayin. Even if it's a child who's reached the age where you can educate him, you have an obligation to educate them what the mitzvah to do the mitzvah of the 4 cups. Now, what does this all mean, and what are the ramifications, and how do we go about it? Many details. As much as details as you have with the Seder plate, you have legabe the halachos of arba koises. It's not just taking a cup of wine and end the story. It's more than that. Mitzvah lachas achi yaim edim imen alov mishubach umenach. First is the famous halacha that you should try to get a reddish wine if the white one isn't better. Now, what does that mean? So, Bepesach mu'uvim mo'oivim kosev daf mi shekosvu arab al rkeich ubal turim shemalov mishuk min edim shukaydim. Lamaisa, it's brought down that even though it says you're supposed to take red unless the white is better, minig oilam lachsa achi yaim edim. The tradition is on the Leil Seder at least. You try to get a reddish wine. Even though the white might be better. It's not brought on the Achroinim, but that's what the Welt does. But it's not as emphasized. Yeah.
The rosé counts as a red?
Yeah, rosé can count as a red. Any type of thing that's darker than pink is counted as a red. Now, he says over here, let's say you want to drink white wine. Put in a little bit of the red wine. Make it a mixture, a little bit of a mixture. Can be You're going to say you're dying over here? It's not considered dying. Because when it comes to food items, there's no concept of dying. And that's what it's brought down here, your question. It doesn't have to be real red wine, meaning what we call a Malaga or a Concord. It shouldn't be white wine. The sefer Hilchos Pesach Perikov to Rav Shimon Ida, Heavy from Rav Moshe Feinstein, Tokay wine. Everybody knows what Tokay wine is. It's not a real red wine. It's what you would call more of a not a pink, but it's a type of light red. He holds that it's considered red, Mikra Edom, Rav Moshe says, And that's what Rav Shmuel also holds, that it's called a reddish wine. And he says over here you can mix wines. Why? Because there's no such thing as tzviya ba'oichlin. Because what's the reasoning behind this? The Gemara Yalfin and the Yain Edom Meshubach Yoisa. It's a known fact that we consider red wine a better species. Kidiksiv Alteri Yain, don't worry about the wine Kiyas Yadim if it's red. Also, another reason which is negay more to Pesach than to the rest of the year, because it's a zeichel adam shayipar shayich b'nei Yisrael. It also reminds us of the blood. V'ayim primigodim umloshna ramah shekos of him ein alov meshubach memenu mevuya shem alov meshuch memenu shapid dami likach yain lovin. Some hold that's better. V'afal pikei nog al mishloichem yain lovin moizgim l'teicha gam ksas yain edom shay dezen epach yain edom. Just put a little bit, if you really need to have that white wine, then just put a little bit of red wine into it. Now, this is because we consider it that we considered already a reddish wine. Now, this is not across the board. Because what happens if you take a yayin lovin, a white wine, shehichnis l'toichait seva machal edom, instead of putting into the wine some more reddish wine, you went and put in a dye of a food item that's red. So he says, on that, it's not considered a red wine. Like kiyam b'zeh mitzvah shel yayin edom. Why not? Now, because the mice the poskim write sheyesh likach yayin edom zeichel adam. One of the reasons is that you take reddish wine as a zeicha for the blood that was spilled. Pshita dahainu shayayin shleikecha dal koichus yeh yayin edom. It should be red wine. Ve'ein hazochem miskayim ki im biyayin. This remembrance is only when you do it with wine. Shelachein because there's some mixture of red wine in it. But if you're just putting in a type of reddish color from a food, he says it's more comparable to taking white wine and putting it into a red glass. You're going to go ahead and take white wine and put it into a red glass. You're going to say that you're drinking red wine? No. The redness has to come from the wine itself. That Rav Shmuel Zalman Auerbach says the same thing. That taking white wine and mixing a little bit red wine into it is considered red wine. But taking a dye or anything, a food item that dyes it, that is not going to be considered that you have red wine.
Sometimes the red just comes from, they add the grape peels. Peels of the grape.
That's part and parcel.
Same wine, just the grape peels.
So what are you trying to say?
They put it in afterwards. It's from the grape.
No. Weiß nicht. Okay. Okay. Kol hayenis haksherim lekiddush b'shar yom tovim b'shabosis ksherim la'arba koises. Any type of wine that you use could go yain mevushel. Technically, yain mevushel would be kosher. You yaitza. V'kanditna. We're going to go into all these questions. What meaning yotza? Meaning it. He didn't say it's the best possible scenario, but this is the facts. Or kanditna. What's kanditna? This is a technical term used for wines in halacha, in chazal. Dahani yayin. This is a wine. Shema'arvin by dvash. It has some honey in it. Upalpalim or pepis, or sukkah, or even sugar. However, abul toiv yoysa likachyayin sheini mevushel im loisha mevushel toiv yoysa. It's better to take wine that hasn't been cooked. Now, this can cause problems on Leil Seder. If you can get a yain sheini mevushel, it's better to get a wine that's not mevushel, because what's the difference between yain mevushel and not mevushel? We're going to go into it, but the reason is because the yain mevushel can't be used, is not really, you call a real true wine, because let's say by the nesachim you had to have a wine that's not mevushel. If it was mevushel, it didn't count. However, if let's say you have friends or family who are coming to a Seder, and by the Seder there is going to be people that are not observant of Shabbos, you have a problem, because there's a whole question whether when they touch the wine, if it's considered proper ceremonial wine. Therefore, you have to make your decisions. Even let's say you want, you can do I remember years ago, my father used to have here a lot of people coming in. Some of the people we weren't sure about. So there was what we call, first of all, there's a mitzvah that someone else should pour you the wine. So several people were designated as the official butlers. And they were the ones that poured the wine for everybody. That way there wouldn't be any type of, everybody knew the wines were off limits. And this is how it was done. But otherwise, get a yain mevushel in order not to have any type of...
The bottle in aluminum or something?
That's when you have a non-Jew looking at it. But we're not talking about people that are non-Jewish. And you can make a little bit. I'm not saying it's the best possible scenario, but that's how it is. Also, we're going to see shortly that wines with sugar are not advisable as well at first rate. Meaning, today they have a listing. You can go get. We have one here available here in the shul. You can get wines that do not have sugar, because the same problem that you have with yain mevushel you have with sugar. Wines that are fermented through sugar is a whole question of whether you should be able to use it for arba koises. There are wines today that are fermented naturally, and you can get that. Number 3, pure grape juice you yoitza arba koises. But still, you want to show cheres. We'll go into this a little bit later, but just to give a bird's eye view. To give cheres, you should have wine with alcohol. Now, there is different types of wines. At one time, all wines basically had 12.5% alcohol. That was the natural wines. I think a Tokay has 12.5. There's some you had that had a little bit more, 16, a little bit stronger wine. But today you can get wines that have an alcohol content of 4 to 5, 6%. Which is a much lighter alcohol content. So you show also cheres, and you show you won't get dizzy after the first cup, let alone the second and third cup. So These are things to take into the consideration. He says, that you should not get a mavushal. V'yayin she'ovolov talich pistor, what we call pasteurization, belaz. We know that all wines today, most wines, are pasteurized. No? Louis Pasteur, you never heard of Louis Pasteur?
I think that's what makes them mavushal. I think the other ones are not.
No, so he says that loy mikri mavushal. Pasteurizing a wine is not considered mavushal. You can pasteurize a wine and still doesn't reach the heat that is needed to be considered mavushal, and it's not a problem. So when you get wines today, be it a Concord, simple wines, let's not go to that. You get a Concord wine, a Malaga wine, they're pasteurized. Wines that are sold on the market, be it Kedem or Carmel, any of these wines, the fancy wines as well, and it says not mavushal, it doesn't mean it wasn't pasteurized. It was pasteurized, and it's not a problem.
So this is a Steinberg question.
Yeah?
We can ask
Well, you can ask him. Okay, I have no problem.
How many degrees it is?
Yeah, right. It makes a difference on what's called bishul. Exactly.
Pasteurization can be like 140, 165 is what they usually do.
That's right. So that's not
165 is
considered.
very hot.
All right, but it's not hot enough to be considered mavushal. That's the key.
Some bottles say it's mavushal, they pasteurized.
Basically. Now, what we do, I don't know, we have to talk to Matzah. We make our own wines for the Seder night. It's not pasteurized. Or we have our own grape juice. So there's ways around it, but that's only when you have homemade wines. Otherwise, you're going to get a pasteurized wine, which is no problem whatsoever al pi halacha. So let's see what he says over here on this ideas. B'shulchan aruch simin tov ayin beis, if you'd beis yotzim b'yayim mavushal v'kandit. Yotzim with it, but it's yotzim lehilchos kiddush v'sham, and what it says over there, that's in Hilchos Shabbos reish ayin beis. V'kach al yayin mavushal al yayin sheish bo yidvash v'shem shem v'kach maleim. Some say not. Hagov aminig l'kadosh olav afilu kishiyesh l'yayin acharak shein toiv k'mayam mavushal. If your cooked wine is better, it has honey in it, it's good. The sukkah who k'may dvash l'nizeh can cause the prima hamagodim. Ubi ha'machloikis. What's exactly the disagreement here? Whether mavushal is problematic. The shita, the day kamais feel the yabishal terobis tvash kudoim and ayam mishtanel griyusa. It's not a problem because it doesn't make it an inferior type of wine. But Yisharim is related to mishtanel griyusa. The afilu by priyagofen ein mevarchim aleim el shahakol. That's how far. V'hine lin yibrocha kaimelon mevarchim lo by priyagofen. There's no question. Just because the guys mavushi make a very begofen. If they are equal, you have wines that are mavushal and not mavushal. Not to be mekadosh. But if you have a better cooked wine, so it depends if you have a certain wine. Like me personally, I rather go on a non-mavushal, but I have a certain wine that is mavushal, that is a lower type of alcoholic content that I enjoy halfway. I take that wine. Once I start taking a non-mavushal wine, you have to be very careful to make sure that it's that it's okay, meaning that you like it, if it's going to be too high or whatever. But there is such wines. Today there is such wines. It's not a problem. You have Fabreng wines, and they're low alcohol and they're non-mavushal. It's a good wine. You can do it. There's ways. That's what I get for Seder night. You get a Fabreng wine. You become 2 mitzvahs at once. The Al-Kois and the Fabreng. So, but you have to be careful with it. Now he says over here, I don't know why he doesn't talk about it. He doesn't talk about sukkah. I don't know why. Okay, he's going to add another caveat over here. Kosev harambam e mikachim ella al yayin haroy lenasach al gabi mizbeach. You don't make kiddush. This is in Hilchos Shabbos. This is by regular kiddush. You don't make kiddush only on wine, which you can go and do the libations on the mizbeach. Lefikichem nesar b'idvash or she'or or se'or afilu ketipis hachadol. If it gets mixed up with any type of honey or fermentation, even like a amount of a seed of mustard, b'chavis kedol and mekachon love, because that's not going to be good for nesachim. Kach anu moirim b'chol ma'ariv yesh mishemat l'kachon love shei. So Amru Yain Hara Nasach Gabes Bech Eloitzi Lahoitzi Megula Isherei Chiram Uvushel Shem Kachim Al Echod Me'elu. But he brings down that there are those that allow it, because that we say you have to have wine that you do libations on means that it shouldn't be uncovered, or it has a bad smell, or it's completely cooked, that you don't do kiddush on these. But what we're saying over here, that it has to be roy l'nasach, this will, when it comes to dvash and sa'ar, we're not talking about that. U'menekal mevushel yayin megula v'sherei chara, mevuy the psul yayin mevushel nesachim hu mishum shenishtan l'griyusa. So he wants to come and say, with a catch-22, that yayin mevushel is only not good because it's a megarusa. V'chein kos b'shal shuvas harivosh b'ri das Rambam. V'chein mashim b'Rambam Hilchos Mizbeach v'elu hen ayenis hapsul l'gam Mizbeach v'mevushel be'esh v'mevushel b'shemesh anishtan tam b'bishul. Because it has to be something that causes harm to the wine by being regular mevushal nowadays. It's not going to cause harm to the wines. And be it told, I can still remember when he was here, Rabbi Chaim Schwartz, he was doing the Vad, he was the Rabbi Machsha of the Vad Rabbonim in those days. He got a wedding where someone he was somebody, I knew this family. He wasn't from the owner, the father of the girl, but the relatives were from. And he had a wine supply place. So he insisted he wants to have yain that's not mevushal by the wedding. And by weddings with hashgacha, they don't allow wine that's not mevushal because there are goyim that touching it, and we don't want to have a problem of yain nesach, yain stam. Therefore, they only supply wines mevushal. So he came to me, that Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky, and he said to me, "What do I do?" I said, "Tell him you don't do it." So he found out there was a place that did it this way in Chicago, and they got special people to pour the wine. So he asked me, that's what hachanos shine, they'll get special waiters that are Shem Shabbos. I said, "What are you going to go? You're going to be part of together now, and the next person, how's it going to work?" I said, "Leave it." Anyway, the fellow was unhappy, and he showed them. He made a non-kosher wedding for the thing, because he couldn't have the wine that's not mevushal, and he kept on saying that there's no comparison between wine that is mevushal and the wine not mevushal. Now, I'm not a connoisseur on wine, but maybe it's like that. But you have to have a certain level of hashgacha as well. But this is the question over here. Pashtus, we'll go into it tomorrow more about this machlokes. The Torah will talk about it, whether wine that's mavushal is l'griyusa or not. Do we consider that l'griyusa or not? Okay, we'll stop over here. Chanani ben Akash Nomas Baruch Zakis Yisrael Lefika Chayvel Avtari Mitzvahs Shenema Adonai Chofetz L'man Tzidko Yagul Torah V'Yadir.